I believe we were talking about Charlie Bronson because you kind of sometimes, that's kind of a heading of your show, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the
That,
name of the
that
show is This Week in Charles Bronson. That's the name of the
yeah,
show, and we talk about his movies, but we also talk about we talk to people who've worked with him, and we've talked to people that just kind of have some kind of either link. We've talked to his niece. She has written a book. We've talked to the biographer of H.M. Wynant, who just turned 99. He is still alive. H.M. Wynant was in a movie with Charles Bronson. But we've even talked to people about other pop culture
I know that
things.
actor that you just mentioned. I've worked with that actor you just mentioned. Why
I
not?
figured you
Yeah.
probably had because he's been around forever and he's done a lot of the same things that you've done. And I
Yeah.
wanted to ask me and Brad, I'm sure both probably wanted to ask you about Paul Koslo and Lettieri. But before we do that, I just want to say that I watched a movie with you in it last night where a lot of the actors are still alive and they are huge. Sean Penn, Kate Winslet, um,
Oh yeah. You're
Mark
talking about
Ruffalo,
all the King's Men.
all the King's Men. I put that on. I had no idea what it was about, and within 5 minutes, I was in love with this movie. Um, and then every 2 minutes, somebody else walked in the door, and I said, "Holy crap! Everybody's in this movie." James Gandolfini. But I was like, "Where the hell
Anthony
is Jordan?"
Hopkins.
Anthony
Uh,
Hopkins, for God's sakes. I was like, "Where's Jordan?"
let
And
me.
then when you popped up,
Yeah.
they were mentioning you
Let
the
me
whole
tell you.
movie. McMurphy. They were talking
Yeah.
about McMurphy.
Let me tell you about my pop up. I played Senator McMurphy in that movie, and of course,
Uh-huh.
Senator McMurphy is talked about almost in 60% of the movie because Senator
Right.
McMurphy is the one that was trying to get the governor thrown out. Now, a very good friend of mine, when the movie came out, very good friend of mine out in California went to see the film. And
Mhm.
I hadn't seen the film yet, and I hadn't seen it since I'd gone down. And obviously I worked some time, but here's the conversation I went with my friend. My friend called me up. I've known him for years. My friend called me up and he says, "Jordan, what was the deal with this movie?" He said, "I go see this movie, All the King's Men, and he said all through the movie they're talking about Senator McMurphy, Senator McMurphy. I know you're Senator McMurphy." He said, and I keep saying to myself, "Well, where's my friend? Where's Jordan and Senator McMurphy?" And he said, "Finally, you pop up." And I go, "Oh, great." I reach down and get some popcorn. I look back up and you're gone. He said, what happened?" And I said, you gotta remember something. As an actor, I have nothing to do with the editing. I have nothing to do with the scenes we cut out of movies.
Right.
I show up, I sign the list, I get my money, they pay me, I do the scenes, I do my work, I go home. And I said,
Well,
I have no idea. But when I saw the film, I was really quite amazed that my Senator McMurphy role had been reduced to, I mean, listen, I'm never going to beef about work, because
right.
that really was the last big film that I've done. I mean, I've done obviously some other things since then. I did before I left New York, because I don't know if you and Brad know, I've been living in Wilmington, North Carolina now it'll be 2 years in March, because
Yes.
we moved out of New York, and moving down here, it's just I've got an agent, of course, who's a local agent. She's up in Hickory, North Carolina, but I really, with the career that I've had, I really don't want to do a lot of the roles that get offered to me today,
Mhm.
because and I don't want to talk a lot about this, but my agent, she called me up because she said they had this thing they wanted me to do in Atlanta. I would do my transportation and my accommodations and all that. So I said, okay, fine. So she sends me the scene, and I look at the scene, and Eric and Brad, it was 4 lines. The character had 4 lines. And so I called my agent back and I said, "No, Beverly," I said, "I tell them thank you very much, but let them give that to some actor that hasn't really worked and, can use the credit and everything." She said, "Well, Jordan, it would reestablish you." I said, I don't want to be reestablished in a four line role.
Right.
Interesting about Charlie Bronson though. This is I hope that certainly you guys and your audience, I hope they watch Greg Gutfeld. I don't know if they do or not, but I hope they watch Greg Gutfeld.
Okay.
This is the strangest thing because I'm going to ask your audience to do something. This is the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. I'm on X, and of course I check X occasionally, but about I don't know 7, 8, 9 months ago, I get an X message from Greg Gutfeld, and and I have no idea how he. I did send him a book, but I don't think he ever got it. But anyway, he sent me a message, and he said, any actor that was in The Terminal Man and did movies with Charlie Bronson, I want to meet. And so I started sending him things back. I think to this conversation today, I've probably sent him 3 different things going back, telling him I'd love to do the show. First of all, I think I'd be good for the show because I think I'd be good for his older listeners. And I think a lot of his older listeners, their kids have seen me a ton of time on YouTube and all the repeats of the shows that they play because I still get residuals from things like Quincy and the Rockford Files and all of that. And I know they're still, showing those shows, but I have never heard a single thing back from Greg. So I don't know. Greg hasn't answered any of my X. So I'm going to ask your listeners and your audience, bombard the Greg Gutfeld show and say, we want to see the actor Jordan Rhodes on your show. And
well, we might have a little pull in that area because Brad, I'm not real. I don't have a big following on X, but Brad seems to. And we have an interview with Juan Fernandez, an actor who worked with Charles Bronson, and Brad mentioned it to James Woods on X, and because James worked with him, and it got 1,000 views. So yeah, maybe we'll start a campaign. What do you think, Brad? Can we do that for Jordan?
I'm going to next time.
Brad, if you'll do that for me and give me your address, I'll send you a book. I'll send you a signed book.
Oh, I'd love a signed book.
And listen,
interesting.
Gutfeld is probably. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, interesting. You brought up James Woods because I just, out of curiosity, here. This has probably been 3 months ago. I was just curious because James he's a hell of an actor. He's a terrific actor, and I was just curious. I thought, boy, he hasn't done anything in a while, so I don't know. Maybe that's just his choice or whatnot. So I went to a friend of mine out there that knows James. And he came back to me and he said, no, he said, James just said ever since going back to like 2016, 18, whatever it was, when he came out in support of Trump, they just won't hire him. He can't get hired.
Oh, really?
And,
well, that's weird because he's a great actor.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a terrific actor. But back to Charlie for a minute. And Brad, if you do that, I'll owe you. That's all I can tell you.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't even bring it up, but I got this X message from Greg Gutfeld, and I still have no idea how that came about because obviously I watch his show all the time and love his show and I love the people on his show, and I've seen he's only had a couple of actors on his show. I know he had he had that young actor who was Superman, and then he had some other series and things.
Dean Cain.
Yes, Dean Cain.
Yeah.
Because I knew his dad, who's the director. I knew him out in California. But he had Dean Cain on, and then he had Charlie on. He had Charlie, the guy with the 2.5 Men.
Charlie Sheen.
Oh, Charlie Sheen. Yeah.
Yeah, because he met Charlie someplace, and just said to Charlie, "Would you like to be on my show?" But he really hasn't had any other actors on this show, and I'm not going to blow my horn or anything here, but I had such a great career. I think you guys know this from the first time we spoke. I was raised on a tobacco farm in North Carolina, and just wound up being invited to a cocktail reception at Buckingham Palace, hosted by Prince Philip at the time. So that's why I wrote the book, because one of my director friends said to me, "You point out another actor to me that came from your background, made a living in this business, and was invited to Buckingham Palace, and I'll tell you, not to write your book." But anyway, back to Charlie Bronson. I had a really, I know you guys probably hear a lot of things about Charlie, and Eric and Brad, I don't know the last time we spoke. Did I talk about the fact that when I was down here doing the Matlock series or whatever, and they contacted me because they knew I had worked with Charlie, and when Charlie passed away, they asked me if I would do an interview or something for the newspaper?
Yes, I believe we did speak about that. Yes, but it's
Which I
okay
did, because
it's okay to talk about things again, because people come stumbling across these shows. They may not have heard the past show.
That's right.
Yeah, well, it's they called and asked me that, and it was funny because the first time I worked with Charlie on 2 films. I worked with him in the Sean Penn's first film that he wrote and directed, called The Indian Runner, and it was really interesting because I'd been with him for 16 weeks when we did Mr. Majestyk, and the reason I got along so well with Charlie is that I picked up right off the bat that Charlie, particularly back during Mr. Majestyk, he was not, he wasn't a real sociable guy. That was just his cut. He was not nasty. He was not mean. He was not. There's all kinds of stories that go like that, which I can't stand.
Right.
But not at all. He just was not a very sociable guy. He liked to stay by himself. And one time I just overheard a conversation. Somebody said to him about your friends, and Charlie said, "I don't really have a lot of friends. Just my family, my immediate family, and my friends." And the reason I think I got along so well with Charlie is that I just respected that. And the only times that really I had conversations with Charlie was when he said something to me. Now we're gonna segue, and we're gonna fast forward to 20 some odd years later, when I'd been hired to play. I had, as you guys probably know, I had a very good role in The Indian Runner. Not all of it again wound up on the screen, but I always tell people, you can tell what the size of my role was if you look at one of the things of the billing, because I had billing over Charlie Bronson. I had billing over.
You had really high billing. You were billed over Sadie Dennis, I think, too, weren't you?
Yeah. So the thing with Charlie is that anyway, I was on location, and he was coming to the set like in a few days. And when I heard he was coming in, now in the meantime, from the time I had done Mr. Majestyk with Charlie till doing The Indian Runner, Charlie, you guys probably know, he had really a lot of tragedy in his life. First of all, he lost his wife Jill to cancer, and he had 2 sons that a lot of people don't know about. And one of the sons, Charlie wanted him to come and live on his farm. I believe it was either in Connecticut or Pennsylvania. I'm thinking more Connecticut. He had a farm up there.
Vermont.
And the son. Yeah, Vermont, good. And the son said he would come up, but he didn't want to live on the property, so he wanted a trailer, and he parked the trailer right on Charlie's by the fence line there on the property. And what a lot of people don't know is that he killed himself. He shot himself with a shotgun. And so Charlie had really, his other son had a drug problem. So Charlie had really had a lot of what I would call tragedy in his life. So when I knew he was coming to the set, we both staying obviously in the same hotel, I went down to the front desk, and I knew I was taking a chance on this because Charlie didn't discuss his personal life with anybody. So I wrote a note to him, and I knew that when I wrote the note that I was taking a chance that he could. I was just welcoming him to the set. I told him, I said, Charlie, I really, my condolences. You've had a lot of tragedy, blah, blah, blah. I just want to welcome you to the set and be nice to work with you again, that kind of thing. And left him the note at the front desk. And as I said, I knew I was taking a chance on that. Now, it's really funny. The next morning, when I come down to go to the set, I don't have my driver. And I look around, and there is the producer and an associate producer. And they said, Tom Mount, he was one of the producers. He said, "Hey Jordan, come on, we'll drive you out to the set." And I thought, oh, okay, it's pretty interesting that the producers are going to drive, drive me to the set. So we get in the car and we're driving out to the set. And Tom Mount turns to me and says to me, Jordan, I want to thank you very much for what you did welcoming Charlie to the set. And I was completely shocked. And I said, wait a minute. I said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, you left him a note, front desk. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I said, how do you know about that? And they said, well, Charlie, when we picked him up, he wouldn't stop talking about it. And he said, how moved he was and really touched. And it was so great. They drove me out to the set. And, of course, I got out of the car, and I'm walking around by the trailers, and Charlie's coming out of his trailer, and he turned around, and he saw me, and he said, hi, Jordan. And I said, hi, Charlie. I walked over. We shook hands. And we really had a terrific relationship all through for as long as he was there on the set, because you guys may or may not remember, but his character kills himself in The Indian Runner.
Right.
And it was so interesting because I used to always tease Sean Penn, because I think you guys know I've known Sean since he's about 17 years old, 16 years old. And it was so funny because I teased Sean when I got that role, because it was one of, particularly at that time in my career, it was one of the biggest leads I'd had in a major motion picture. And so they got me with Tom Mount, Sean, and this other Don Phillips, the other associate producer or assistant producer, whatever. They got together and they said, listen, we need to talk to you about Charlie Bronson. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, he's on the movie, he's coming in, and we need to know if you'll tell us what's he like to work with. And I said, what are you talking? He said, well, they said he gave the wardrobe girl, the gal, a little bit of trouble. I said, I know exactly what that was. And they said, what? And I said, Charlie never likes to try on outfits. He likes to try on the shirts, the jackets, and then he likes to try on the slacks, but he doesn't like to try them all at the same time. I said, because a lot of people don't know this. I learned this from Charlie. A lot of people don't know this. He was probably the only actor I know, guys, that ever had his dungarees tailor-made. And he had them tailor-made because he had a very low rise. Charlie had a very low rise. And so he didn't like the way, he wasn't trying to be a biggie or anything about it. He just didn't like the way jeans fit him. So right. he had the money. Why not? So he had them tailor-made. So anyway, they all wanted to know to me, they said, what's he like to work with? And I said, I got to tell you right now, he's as professional as you're ever going to get. I said, first of all, believe me, he'll know all of his lines and everything when he shows up. And I said, he's really good to work with. You won't have any problem at all with the guy. And which I thought was really funny that they were asking me what it was like to work with this major star. But I enjoyed the two times I worked with Charlie. I enjoyed working with Charlie. I didn't have any problem with him, even at all, because I respected his space.
That's right.
And when I worked with him on the Mr. Majestyk, and of course, he was just doing. He was doing like a guest performance in The Indian Runner, because he played David's father in there.
That's right.
But it was anyway, and it's so funny because people are asking me. I still get letters and things, because you guys don't know this, but every Wednesday I do a talk show thing. I do a little guest segment on a talk show. I've been doing it for probably, I don't know, 5 years or so now. It's the Liz Calloway show that comes out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But I know
you did that, Jordan.
Well, you guys would know this better than anybody. Today they do radio today. It's broadcast. They have about 100,000 watt station, so it goes out pretty far. But then it's streamed on your computer. Yeah. So people, I have people that send me emails from Maine, Virginia, Georgia, obviously North Carolina, South Carolina. But if they go to talk945.com, they get this show, and every Wednesday from 9:30 to 10, I go on with a thing called On the Road Again with Jordan Rhodes. And so I do that, and I hear from a lot of people, and a lot of the people that I hear from ask me things like, well, where's your fan club? what you and I tell them, I said, I haven't had a fan club in years, guys. I said, I only had a fan club in my heyday in California when I was going from show to show to show, and then also from the fact that somebody else pointed out to me the other day. Do you guys know much about these Comic Cons that they do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other day somebody called me. In fact, the Coastal Comic Con is coming here to Wilmington in March. And
Okay.
somebody called me. Yeah, somebody called me and they said, "Are you aware that 5 of the shows that you've done are with comics and Comic Con?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" They said, "Well, you've done 4 series that are comic books." And I said, "What 4 series?" They said, "The Night Stalker became a comic book." I said, "Oh." They said, "Wonder Woman comic book." And yeah, and I did the pilot of Wonder Woman. I said, "Oh." They said, "Bonanza is a comic book, and Battlestar Galactica is a comic book." And then I'm amazed that people sometimes remind me of this stuff. And they said, "You were in a one of those anime series called Crusher Joe, I think."
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I was Lieutenant Barney.
Okay.
Barney in that thing. I mean, look, I was the voice because it's animated,
Right.
but I was the voice of Lieutenant Barnaby. So this person pointed it out to me, and they said, "You should be at these Comic Cons." So now the guy that's running the Comic Con, the Coastal Comic Con, coming here to Wilmington in March, is talking to me about wanting to know if I'd like to have a table on the floor. And I said, "Sure." I've been doing these celebrity conventions. I mean, that for an old actor, it's kind of a nice payday or two. But I don't know if they're going to have me do it or not because I've never done a Comic Con or any of that stuff.
Right.
But I still, you guys, I think, are about maybe only the 3rd podcast that I've been asked to do. You guys have asked me to do one, and I've done 2 others. I can't remember what they were right now. They were the ones where you're actually on, you're on the video at the same time that you're on the air.
Right.
But,
yeah, I was watching
anyway.
one yesterday. It was a gentleman. It was called like something like On Film or something like that. I could see you getting asked to do a lot more once you start doing these. You're doing these Comic Cons and these signings. Once people see that you were on Battlestar Galactica, people are nerds for things like Battlestar Galactica, Charles Bronson, all those things. Like,
but Eric, you're. I got to say, you're absolutely right. Battlestar Galactica, the first one of these I did, which was a number of years ago. I, of course, I have production shots from movies I've done with Charlie Bronson, from movies I've done with Sean Penn, from you have a bunch of those things because when you're on the floor, you sign those. Now I have a book. So I have a book, and I always had my Papa, the Man, the Myth, the Legend, since that was, they did a DVD of that film during a live performance. So, you sign those and you sell those. And so when I went to my first one, I took about 5 Battlestar Galactica pictures because I was Brace on Battlestar Galactica. And
correct.
I said, and I got to tell you guys, I'll tell your listeners, as far as I'm concerned as an actor, it was not one of my finer hours. The character that I did, Brace. Anyway, long story short, so I go to this convention. It was a pretty big one. It was in Maryland, and it was a 3-day place. And I go there, and the booker that booked me for it, that came, his name was Matt. He came down and was going there, and everybody that came by my table, I mean, they would see the Bonanza stuff. They would see they'd see the Matlock. They'd see that, but I cannot tell you how many people would go, "Oh, I thought you were Brace on Battlestar Galactica." And so I went. Those pictures just flew out of there. So my booker came and he said, "Let me give me one of those pictures." I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to go to a press shop and get some more of these made. You don't have any." He said, "You only brought what, 5?" And that has been one of my biggest selling pictures. Apropos what you were just saying, Eric, about the people that follow this stuff. That's been one of my.
It's not always about the quality of the work. It's a lot to do with the memories. the memories that people have of
Mhm.
I know you're laughing, but it's like as a kid, I was born in 1975. So Star Wars was literally it was everybody's life, every young boy, maybe not every young boy, but most young boys' lives. And so Battlestar Galactica came out on TV, Buck Rogers, things like
Yeah.
that. People have such fond memories of those things. And to get to meet somebody who did it and to meet somebody as kind and without much ego like you know, it means a lot to people. And I think that's why people thrive so much. Like there's people that kind of maybe thought they were forgotten, and then somebody notices them that they're out there, and then the next thing you know, like Janice Blythe, she's an actress. She was in a couple of really like legendary horror movies, The Hills Have Eyes and Eaten Alive. And our friend,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, a friend of our show, Jeff Clayton, he was on our breakout show. He's got a band, a punk rock band called Anti Scene, and they have a song called Ruby Run to the Hills, which is about that movie, The Hills Have Eyes. And he reached out to her, and now like she sells her autographs online to to their fans, you know, and they put her picture on T-shirts and stuff. It's really cool. It's really neat, you know, because like I'm the kind of guy when I'm watching something from when I was young, or even something now. Like I know who the famous people are, but when I see a lot of times you'll see a small part and you'll go, man, that person's really good or that person's really unique. And then because I can go on my phone and look them up, you look them up, and then I start to go down rabbit holes of learning about them and seeing what else they were in. And people like stuff like that. I think it's that.
Oh yeah.
I think you're lucky to be involved in that because I think you're perfect for that, and I'm glad that's
Oh,
happening to you.
yeah, I absolutely agree because I still to this day, people will email me. I did the original Night Stalker. It was the
Yes.
pilot film, and it's kind
Hmm.
of I've been in my career. I've been really lucky because I've done a lot of those shows that have become like icon shows, like The
Hmm.
Blue and the Gray, for example. That was only the
Yes.
first time Gregory Peck had ever done television. It was a big thing. Then, of course, The Night Stalker, which went on to become a series. And there's some guy that does, you and Brad may know this, but there's some guy that does he does what that gal used to do out in California, Vampira, what she used to do.
Hmm.
Yes.
He puts on these kind of horror, spooky movies, and then he inserts himself into the scene.
Okay.
He'll he'll like put himself in there. I got about 15 emails of people sending me. He was doing the Night Stalker, and he inserted himself in the scene between me and Darren Gavin.
Was it
So,
Sven Gulli?
yeah, that's who it is. Yeah, yeah,
Sven Gulli, yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
he's still huge somehow. Like he's on that Me TV, which is like
yeah,
that's the nostalgia network, you know what I mean? So
yeah. And so, and I can't tell you, as I said, I think I got about, for me, which I think is a lot, I got like 8 or 10 people emailing me, sending me that video that I was on there with Svengali or whatever this guy was, and they all said something like, "Well, now you've really made it because
yeah.
you were on with Svengali, whatever this guy's name is."
Listen, Sven
And I just
Gulli, yeah, a
yeah,
lot of celebrities are big fans of his. Like he get like mostly comedians. He gets Dana Gould, Gilbert Gottfried was on there before. So yeah, Sven Gulli, that's a really hip to be on Sven Gulli these days.
Congratulations, Jordan.
Yeah.
yeah, you
My
guys
son
should look
who's
that up
10.
because
Yeah.
it's really funny because he inserts himself. It worked out fine because Darren has come, and the other thing about that, I was supposed to be a recurring character in the Night Stalker when they went to series, but unfortunately I had gotten, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but I'd gotten hired on Streets of San Francisco,
Hmm.
and I wasn't able because they didn't make a deal with me when I did the pilot, but it was after I did the pilot that they then wanted to have my character because I was Darren Gavin's hospital connection.
Right.
Doctor, I forget what my name was, but anyway, so I was supposed to be a recurring character, but I feel as somebody pointed out to me, I've been a recurring character on, I think it's 5 shows: Streets of San Francisco, Matlock, and 3 soap operas.
Right.
I was a recurring character on Guiding Light, the one Ryan's Hope, and then of course All My Children, the big one. And
Well, what about those soap opera conventions? Don't they have soap opera conventions still, or no?
I don't know, because I don't think there are a lot of soap operas on the air anymore. There are only, what, 2 or 3?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I just feel
I
like
tried.
Mhm.
No, I was going to say, I tried to bring because when I moved back to Wilmington, you guys probably don't know this, but the first time I discovered Wilmington was in 1993, when they brought me out of New York to do the recurring role of Lieutenant Harmon Andrews on the Matlock series. And I did that for 3 seasons here. And so I really got to know Wilmington. And of course, met my wife here. And we got married, and we went on the road with the play that I created, Papa, the Man, the Myth, the Legend. We went on the road with that for almost 7 years, and we toured that. And then even while I was here in Wilmington, I did 2 or 3 other films. I know I did a film with Joe Don Baker, who was a friend of mine. I'd known him since New York. And I did one with Lou Gossett, and then I did one other one I can't remember. But I did those films, and so that's what made me know about Wilmington. So when I came back to Wilmington, having done some of these they call them celebrity nostalgia conventions, having done some of those, I came here, and they've got this beautiful convention center. And I thought, man, this would be a perfect place to do one of these. So I tried to do one here. And of course, I had a ton of celebrities that I know: Morgan Fairchild, Ed Begley Jr., Robert Wagner, Jill St. John, Stephanie Powers. I won't bore you with that. So I had all my celebrities and everything, and I tried to do this, and I had to put up a deposit on the convention center to get a date, which I did. And you guys will be the first to know this on going out on air or anything. I lost my deposit because I couldn't get sponsorship. I couldn't, even in this town, which is a lot of people don't know, Wilmington, North Carolina is a film city. I mean, they've got 2 film studios here. They got Sin Space Studios, which used to be Screen Gems, and then they've got Dark Horse. But Sin Space, that's really the big movie studio down here, and they still do things here, not like they did when I was doing Matlock. When I was doing Matlock, they were probably doing a movie of the week every month down here. But I thought it would just be perfect for this area, because they filmed Dawson's Creek here, they filmed One Tree Hill here, they've Matlock series, and people still come wanting to go to those sets and all of that kind of stuff, or go to those locations. But I couldn't get the sponsorship, so I took little Jordy's pocketbook took a beating.
Oh man,
I'm sorry, Jordan. I saw that. I follow you on Facebook, so I had seen where that event had to be canceled, and I just couldn't believe it had to be canceled.
Yeah,
it's just
that's
it was
a
amazing.
shame.
I got some small sponsors, that would do $1,000, $2,000, but the big people here, and believe me, there was a lot of money in Wilmington. I mean a lot of money in Wilmington. The people that put up for the Wilson Center here, they put up something like I don't know, $15-20 million for the Wilson Center, and they wouldn't even respond to me. Then there's a bunch of other ones like that, but anyway, I couldn't get it done. And I guess if I'm at the convention center at all, will be if this fellow Steve Powell, he's the promoter of this Coastal Comic-Con, and actually. I'm not sure I should be giving him a plug, since I don't know if I'm going to be doing the Comic-Con. But he's doing that here. He's doing that here in March. And but I haven't done one of those since it's got to be, I guess, 2 or 3 years. Well, no, we'll be here too. It's got to be about 3 years since I've done one of the celebrity conventions, and I loved them, because as you were talking about, both of you were talking about a little while ago, apropos. I just get the biggest kick out of me personally about the fans that will come by and will remember. I had a lady come by when I was at one of these things. It might have been New Jersey. I can't remember. I've done about 5 or 6 of them. But I had this lady come by my table, and I could not believe this lady. She, an older lady, she came by my table, and she started telling me unfortunately, she had the wrong title. She started telling me about this show she had seen me in, which she was calling, oh, good Lord, the gal that did the investigative show. Anyway, the show was Bracken's World. But she knew my character. She knew that I was the nephew of this lady, and she knew the actress that was that person. I could not believe all of the information this lady had, and I could hardly remember the show. The main thing I remembered about the show is when I was doing the Bracken's World, Joe Don Baker had come. He had to come out to 20th Century Fox, I guess either prepping a show or wrapping a show, and he came by the set because he wanted to say hi to me. And we started talking, and it was one of the first times I've ever had an actor friend of mine. When I said to him, I said, "Joe Don, how you doing?" He said, "Oh, Jordan." He said, "Man, I'm beat." He said, "I've been going from film after film after film. I got to take some time off. I'm beat." And I thought, man, that's got to be the greatest actor's lament you want to have. Is to say you're working so much you're beat. But I go all the way back with Joe Don Baker, and I don't know if I've ever told you guys about this, but in New York, I was in a group of there was a group of 5 of us that made the rounds. And what, for you listeners out there that may not know, years ago in New York, you still do some of it now, but not like you did back in the 60s. You made the rounds. You went every morning. You go down to Equity. You go down to SAG. You see what's on the board. You go around. You knock on doors. If a producer's doing something, you leave a picture and a resume. And I always love to tell people this. My group, I always say I'm going to name them in the order of importance. Number 1 would be Dustin Hoffman, because he became a big star. Then there's Joe Don Baker, who had quite a career. Most people, I think, remember him from Walking Tall, but Joe Don did an awful lot of work. He was in 2 or 3 Bond films.
Yeah,
and he was in Charlie Varick, one of my
Charlie Varick.
favorites.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember
absolutely.
that one.
He was. Oh, he was great in that film.
That's one of his best performances.
And that was directed by Richard Siegel, right? Who directed
Richard
Charles
Siegel.
Bronson and
Don Siegel.
Don Siegel.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
Don
Richard
Siegel,
Fleischer.
Don Siegel, yeah.
I'm getting Richard Fleischer and Don Siegel mixed up.
Yeah, but also Don Siegel,
Mhm.
whose name is Donald Siegel. You may or may not know this. He played the bartender in the first film that Clint Eastwood ever
Play
directed,
Misty for me.
called Play Misty for Me. And of course, Clint had worked for Don Siegel a number of times, but but Donald Siegel was the same one. Yeah, the same one was in that movie. But back to backtrack me here. Where were we? There was
Joe Don Baker.
You're talking about Joe Don.
Oh yeah. Okay, so it was Dustin Hoffman, Joe Don Baker. I would be 3rd on that list, and then there was Joe Signorelli, which you wouldn't know him by name, but if you watch TV and stuff, he always played cops, cab drivers, all that kind of thing. And then there was oh boy, I'm leaving out the guy, Eric. Can't think of his last name, but Eric was the one that we never talked about anybody being stars in this group. In fact, there were 6 of us. Gary Flanders would be the last one on the group, but Gary died from an overdose. But the guy whose name escapes me right now, I did summer stock with him, but he was about 6'2", black hair, blue eyes, really good-looking guy. And we were all good actors. I mean, everyone in the group of all of these guys, and there was never any talk about being a star or anything, and we were all in the theater, not interested in films and that kind of thing. And I can guarantee you 2 things. Number 1, the one that we thought would be a star, whose name is just escaping, Eric was his first name, just like yours, but I can't think of anyway, he wound up running his father's hardware store in upstate New York in Buffalo. And I told you about Gary Flanders, doing in the whole group. There's not a person in the group, and this would include Dustin, that thought that Dustin Hoffman would wind up being the big breakout star.
Wow.
And here's another tidbit that your listeners may, because you guys may not know this either. This is the most, when you talk about odds, this is the most unbelievable thing in the world. 3 actors that were roommates in New York. Dustin Hoffman, Robert, oh, good Lord, why is my name missing me? Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, and my wife's favorite actor, does the cowboy stuff. Robert won his Oscar for thing. Who's your favorite actor? Robert Duvall. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Robert Duvall.
Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, Robert Duvall. They were 3 roommates
Oh my
in
God.
New York.
That's a powerhouse right there.
All struggling young actors. Not a one of them ever thinking they were going to do anything other than just possibly work. The odds on that happening, to me, beat the odds of Lotto, which are what 200 million or something. But can you imagine that? That always surprised me. That surprised the heck out of me. And then another thing that surprised me, not as interesting to you guys as your listeners, but when I was writing quiz questions for the Hollywood Squares, I wrote for Mr. Peepers. Mr. Peepers. Wally Cox. Wally Cox.
Oh, Wally Cox.
Yeah, Wally Cox. Now, when I found out, you guys want to guess who Wally Cox's roommate was in New York and who he
Marlon Brando
on motors? Oh, hey, way to go!
Ooh, good job, Eric.
Hey, listen.
I'm telling you, I couldn't believe it when I worked on a thing called I can't remember the name. It was a Western. I just can't remember the name right now. In fact, another one of my friends who killed himself was a star of that series. But that's the first time I worked with Wally Cox. Years later, I wrote quiz questions for him on Hollywood Squares. But I met Wally Cox, and in a conversation with him one day, and he mentioned he was talking about this guy, and he kept saying Bud, this guy Bud, and then I said Bud, and he said yeah, Marlon Brando. And I said Marlon Brando.
They were longtime friends. Yeah, I interviewed Burt Kearns, who wrote a book about Marlon Brando just about 2 years ago. Burt Kearns is a good friend of the show because we had him on about his book wrote a book about Lawrence Tierney, who is, as you mentioned, Scott Brady's brother.
Scott Brady's
That's
brother. That's how Scott got into business.
That's right.
So I had him back on about the Marlon Brando book, even though Marlon Brando never worked with Charles Bronson. Burt is a really great guest, and there's a lot about Wally Cox and Marlon in that book. It's a good book.
Oh, I'm telling you,
they were good friends.
When I found that out, it blew me, because Wally Cox, when you met him, he really was Mr. Peepers. I mean, he was just, I remember he really did a wonderful thing for me because I was working a lot in those days. But one of the things that I really didn't like doing was I didn't like looping. And for your listeners that don't know, looping is when you're doing shows like Adam 12, or you're doing these cop shows and these things. Anything you shoot out on the street at the studio, you have to go back in the studio and you have to loop those lines in because a lot of times there's outsized noise and things like that. And so it's called looping. And I used to, being basically a Stanislavski trained actor, I used to go into looping, and I used to go through all of these incredible things. If my character was out of breath or whatnot, I would drop down on the floor and do some push-ups, and I would just go through all these things. And not only did I dislike it, the looping guys, when they would see me coming, I knew they didn't like it either. And they would say, "Oh boy, here comes that New York actor again," and that thing. So I'm on this show with Wally Cox. And Wally and I was in his dressing room. We were talking, and they came to the dressing room. They found me, and they said, Jordan, they said, we need you down at looping. They said, you got to do some thing from you, an Adam 12 that you did a couple of days ago, whatever. And I said, oh, okay. And so they left, and I had this thing, and Wally Cox said to me in his Wally Cox voice, "What's the matter?" And I said, I got to go and I got to do this looping. And he said, well, why do you don't like that? And I said, it just drives me crazy. I said, I go in there trying to duplicate this emotion. And he said, Jordan, you can't duplicate emotion. And I said, yeah. I said, I go in there. He said, no. He said, you play the guitar and sing. And I said, yeah. He said, just do it musically. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if you go in there and you hear your guy go, ha ha hoo hoo ha. Just do ha ha hoo hoo ha. Just duplicate the sound. Whatever sound you hear him do, just do it musically. If it's, oh my God, just do, oh my God. He said, don't try to do any of those. He says, because you can't do it. He said, but if you'll just duplicate the sound you hear, it'll match the emotion that's on the screen. And I'm telling you, I went down to looping that day and put those earphones on, and you hear that beep, 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 and then you're lying. And I just did exactly what Wally told me to do. I just mimicked it and thought of it musically, that if my tone of voice went up, I would go up, you know, and I'm telling you, I did it. And I remember, I'll never forget the look on their faces, the looping guys in the tech room there. I did the first one, and he came back on the thing and he said, "I was very good. Just do one more." And I did it, and I did it. And I said, okay, that's good. And I was in and out of there in a flash. And on the way out, one of the looping guys said to me, and his exact quote was, he said, "What the hell happened to you?" And I said, what are you talking about? He said, "You came in here, you just breezed through this thing today. You did this like a pro. What happened?" I said, "Wally Cox gave me a tip." And they said, "Mr. Peepers?" I said, "Yeah." So
Hey, Jordan,
anyway.
Do you mind if I make a couple of comments and ask you follow that with a question? Because if back when we had our first show, both Eric and I were very interested in knowing more about your show, Papa. And you provided us with a DVD, and so I just wanted, and so since that first show, I think we both had a chance to watch that, and I'm just gonna start out by saying it's just incredible. I mean, it held it. I learned so much when I watched it. It held my attention. It's almost a 2-hour production. It held my attention. I thought you were incredible in it. I thought your wife was incredible, as you know, playing like 4 or 5 different parts that she played.
Yeah, she played the 5 women in his life.
Yeah, and so I wanted to thank you for giving us a chance to watch that, because it really, I've watched a lot of your career work, and I just think it's a career topper that a lot of actors never get a chance to do something really that interesting and that good. And it's funny, I was watching your episode that you did with the Rockford Files, and I noticed that in the Rockford Files, the same episode you were in where you played a doctor, one of the discussions between Mr. Rockford and his friend, played by Anthony Zerbe in the episode, was about Hemingway, because Zerbe was a writer and he was having issues with alcohol, and so they had a back and forth about Hemingway. I just thought it was interesting that you did such a wonderful performance, and I was looking at the credits after I watched that, and y'all basically made that thing come alive. And I just want to thank you for that, because I learned a lot when I watched that. I didn't know a lot about Hemingway. I knew about his works, but I didn't know about him as a person. And that really brought that alive for me. And I wanted to thank you for that first.
I agree with Brad.
Listen, first of all, thank you very much, both you and Eric. Thank you. I'm quite proud of that, because I had to be talked into filming it, because we had been touring it for almost 7 years. And then when and the reason we were having to shut it down is it wasn't that, I don't want to give anybody the impression that I won't work for $2,500, but it was just that a show that we were basically getting $7,500 to do, because we had a set and a trailer, a lighting director, and it was just no way we could take that to theaters for $2,500. We just couldn't do it. So we were going to shut it down. And that's when some people came to us and said, "You can't let this thing die." They said, "It's the greatest piece that's ever been done about Hemingway's life, and you need to film it." And I made the comment about, well, that takes a fair amount of money. And somebody said, "Don't worry." And actually, the only billionaire I've ever known, Jeff Schwartz, God bless him and God rest him, he's passed away. But and he was never looking to do anything, with films or television or theater or anything. But he put up the money for us to film that. And we filmed it. And I don't know if you guys are aware or not, but I had to be talked into sending it to some film festivals, because when they were first asking me to do that, I complained because I said, well, it's not really a film. It's a film production. And then people came back to me and said, Jordan, Long Day's Journey into Night, Death of a Salesman, the Barrymore. They said they were all plays on Broadway that were filmed. The National Theatre Company in London now films all of their productions and sends them out worldwide. So anyway, I sent it to some festivals, sent it to 3, got accepted into all 3, but figured the one for me to do was the New York International Film Festival. And so we went. I don't know if you guys know this or not. I don't know if we ever talked about it, but we went there. And the festival, we were in New York for 2 weeks, and it was shown at a multiplex there a number of times. And we leave New York, and at that time, I think we were living in Seven Lakes in North Carolina, which is by the Pinehurst area, because we'd been touring the play. And I get a phone call one day from the New York International Film Festival people, and they call up and they wanted to know. They said, Jordan, will you be attending the awards show? They said, we have an awards show each year, and you guys will get a kick out of this, Brad, you and Eric. Guess where the New York International Film Festival awards show is held? L.A.
Jeez.
So I said to them, I said, well, where's the festival? They said, it's in Los Angeles. And I said, no. I said,
I thought you were going to say Newark or something.
Yeah, right.
Newark, New Jersey.
I'm not going to go there. And so then they said, okay, well, we'll send your awards down there. Just give us your address. And I said, wait a minute. What do you mean my awards? And they said, yeah. And I said, what did we win? I said, well, you won the Best Historical Drama Feature Award. And I said, are you kidding? They said, no, you won Best Historical Drama Feature Award. And I'm reading this off my wall right now, which is a plaque. You won Best Actor, Best Director, and she won Best Actress. And I just couldn't believe it. And back to our friend Joe Don Baker, who has, of course, since passed away. Joe Don called me in New York when we found out later about this, and he said, Jordan, he said, I just said you got some awards for that Hemingway show. I said, yeah. And he said, what kind of money did you get? And I said, Joe Don, come on. I said, I got 3 plaques on my wall, man. That's all I got. Let me add one last thing about that, and then I'll stop about this, because just so that you guys will know, I'm sure that you are aware of Taylor Sheridan.
Yes,
of
course.
Okay, I mean, he is the hottest. He's the hottest guy going right now.
Yeah,
with all of the
basically,
shows that he's been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me tell you what this old actor's been trying to do. I have been trying to I've created an 8-part limited series based on Papa the Man, the Myth, the Legend, for it to be a film series, because everything that's talked about in the play, you put that on the screen.
This is where my question was. This was my question. I wanted to know about, when you were with us last time, you mentioned this 8-part series, and I was wondering if you'd gotten any traction with that.
No, I have been trying. In fact, I made another huge push literally on Friday. I've been trying to just get it to Taylor Sheridan, because Taylor Sheridan has a very simple background to me. I mean, a similar background to me, because he did some small acting roles. Not great act, but he did some small acting roles. But he is an incredible writer, and he works basically with 2 other people. He works with Christian Wallace, and he works with Stephen Kay. Stephen Kay directs most of his television shows.
That's correct.
Of course, Christian Wallace is the one that worked with him on the Landman. That one, because Christian Wallace has such a huge knowledge of the oil industry and all of that.
That's right.
But I have been trying. Even my friend Sean Penn. Sean has the same agent at CAA. His name is Brian Lord at CAA. Sean has the same agent that Taylor Sheridan has. And so Sean tried to he gave me a recommendation, and I went there, but I couldn't get any response back. So literally on Friday, I went back to the other agent at CAA that works with Taylor Sheridan, and his name is Joe Cohen, and he's the one that made all of these incredible deals for Taylor at Warner Brothers and all this stuff. I guess you guys know about his billion-dollar deal.
Yeah.
So what I did is I sent it in complete thing out. Again, I sent it. I had Taylor's production manager down there in Texas, because Taylor, he doesn't like California. He doesn't work out of California. He works out of Texas. And
Right.
I sent it out. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get one of these groups to want to pick it up to do something with it. So
That would be amazing.
I'm telling you, I know this sounds all egotistical, but I honestly believe if somebody will make it, and I've told them on this, all I want to do is just be basically a consulting producer on it, because I've done all the grunt work, I've done all the research, everything. So all it has to be done now is just fleshed out the way Taylor Sheridan can write and do that, and that's really the only thing I want to do. But I honestly believe if this was made, it will be bigger than The Crown. And when people question me about that, I say because there is more international information or, curiosity about Hemingway's life than there is about the Queen of England.
Yeah.
And that's why because he's not only an American icon, but he really is an international icon.
That's right.
And and when I was looking all this stuff up, trying to find it out, I couldn't believe it, because some of the stuff I had to go and recheck. I just couldn't believe it. Hemingway still sells almost 800,000 books a year.
Wow.
Now the man has been dead since 1960 something.
Yeah. 61.
And he still, he still sells this incredible amount of books. And so I just
think those biotype shows. I think those biotype shows are hot right now too, because people, me and Brad's age, we're interested in knowing about the life of these people. But I also think because young people don't have that much access to, they have the access, but they're living like in this like very fast paced short,
and they don't read the books anymore.
Right. They're living in this fast-paced short video type of world where they don't do this kind of archiving back historical digs like we did as kids, where like when a show like that comes out, they're like, oh, I get I can watch this and learn about this. And a lot of them probably may not even know the name Hemingway. You know what I mean?
Well,
Which is odd.
Eric, I'm 52 years old. I watched Jordan's show, and so I've always known who Hemingway was. I've heard about him. Now I know about him. I watched Jordan give an incredible performance. I saw that Jordan developed the series, wrote. I just think this is an incredible piece of work that needs wider and wider distribution. I just think people need more access to it. I really do.
I agree with you.
I was going to say, I don't think it's easy to do that either, to do a one man. I know your wife was in it, but for with the exception of her, it's a one man show. That's not easy to do. It's not easy to make that interesting.
58 pages of dialogue.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that helped it, and this is what I am trying to get across to these Hollywood people that I'm talking to, that I'm trying to get this to, is that Hemingway's life, the fact of his life, far exceeds any fiction you could make up.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
You can't make up the stuff that went on with him. Like since you guys have seen the piece, I'll tell you something that blew me away. When I was trying to get it produced on Broadway, and I couldn't. I didn't have a big enough name. And when I then got some names interested, I just couldn't get the money to do it. But when I was sending it around, I sent it to David Brown, Helen Gurley Brown's husband, David Brown. But David Brown it was out in California. It was the producer. It was Brown and, oh, good Lord. The big out there in the play. It's the one, I want to say Siegel, but it's not Siegel. I can't think. Anyway, there's a point in the play where Hemingway is up and like in the remote mountains, and the guy down at the little store comes up to get him to tell him that there's a phone call that
Right.
he has Zanuck, that he has.
Yeah, Daryl Zanuck.
That they, yeah, that Daryl Zanuck was on the phone for him, and so he has this call. Well, I didn't know, but Zanuck and David Brown were partners, because you see Zanuck Brown an awful lot of times. You see that name. But when I sent this thing out, it was amazing. I got a phone call when I'm in North Carolina. I got a phone call one day from David Brown, and he was living in New York. And he called me up, and I was just tickled to death. And he wanted to tell me, I'd sent him the information, I'd sent him all this stuff, and he wanted to tell me how much he really thought, how good he thought it was. He said, unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of Hemingway's. And he said, I'm not going to be able to help you get this produced on Broadway. He said, but I do want to compliment you on one thing. You have a lot of true stuff in that play. And I said, yeah. He said, well, you have that thing in there when he's on the phone with Mr. Zanuck. And he comes down out of the mountains, and Mr. Zanuck wanted him to shorten the title.
Right.
I said, yeah. And he said, and you have that thing on there where he spells out the title. And of course, he spells out F for Fox, U for Universal, C for Columbia, K for RKO. And he says that should fit most movie marquees, and you can't beat it for a sex symbol. And then he hangs up on him. And this man, David Brown, said to me, Jordan, I was in the conference office when that call was on a speaker phone, because he said Zanuck had a speaker phone, and he said, I don't know where you got that information, but I just wanted to let you know I was in that meeting when that happened with Hemingway. And so that really made me feel good. Because, and of
that's
course,
amazing.
Yeah, and in the play, it's a really big thing. Well, listen, guys, I'm sure this has been great fun. I will certainly keep you guys informed and let you know. And Brad, since you watch me on Facebook, I'll be posting anything on Facebook that I can find out about. I'm convinced if I can get my presentation, which is only about, I think it's 4 or 5 pages, but it's just a presentation of how it could be an 8-part series, quite easily. And all of the stuff that this guy, there's so many people that didn't know Hemingway was ever even in World War One.
Right.
He was the first American wounded in World War One.
That's right.
He was an ambulance. Yeah, he was an ambulance driver because he tried to sign up for the service, but he had a bad left eye, so he couldn't pass the test. But he was an ambulance driver. And then, of course, he was in World War II, which, as you saw in the play, which all fact. He got brought up on charges by the general there because he was not supposed to be carrying a firearm. That was against the rules, for correspondence. And he literally got brought up on some heavy charges. But as he said, he had his fingers crossed when he lied and said he hadn't done that. But I'll keep you guys, via that or whatnot. And of course, I've got Eric. I've got your number and everything. I can keep you guys up on that. And Lord, if I could get that thing done, I'd love to come back on your show and talk about that. And of course, again, say that I'll credit it all to Charlie Bronson.
Oh,
that's
yes,
great.
Sir.
Well, listen, you're welcome back anytime, Jordan. And do you mind if I ask you one more question before you go? Or are you in a hurry?
No, not at all. No.
Okay.
No.
What kind of memories do you have of Al Lettieri?
Oh, good Lord.
The heavy and Mr. Majestyk.
Yeah, it's amazing. My wife is she always loves that story so much about him being up on the rooftop. It's really funny. I don't know what it is about my personality, but some really tough guys that I've known in my life, we have become just for some reason immediate friends. Right. And when I met Al Lettieri on Mr. Majestyk, for some reason, Al and I can't explain it. I don't know what it was. There was some reason he liked me, and we used to sit and just chat for so long and all that. And I don't know if do you want an Al Lettieri story?
Sure.
Okay. All right. I don't know I'm pretty sure I probably didn't talk about this the last time. When Al Lettieri was doing Mr. Majestyk, and of course, as I said, I stayed in touch with him after Mr. Majestyk and in touch with him right up until the time he passed away. And I don't know if a lot of listeners and people know, but Al Lettieri, he didn't even need the career he had here in this country, because Al Lettieri, because he was bilingual, he spoke Italian just fluently. You know, he did overseas. Al wrote movies, wrote screenplays, and was in all kinds of stuff in Europe. He just had an incredible career over there. Anyway, back to Mr. Majestyk. On a weekend, we had wrapped on a Friday, didn't go back to work again till Monday, and Al had finished a movie in L.A. called The Don, which was kind of like a takeoff on The Godfather, but it was called The Don. And they got in touch with Al, and they said they need to fly him back to L.A. He had to do some looping on the film. So Al flies back to L.A., and on his way back to, we were in Manzanita, Colorado. On his way back to Manzanita on a private plane, Al, I can't even tell us with a straight face, Al, because he saw the little town we were in and everything, Al brought back two ladies of the evening with him, two lady escorts. We know what that means. A pillowcase full of pot.
Okay.
So he arrives back in Manzanita on a Sunday night, gets in a cab, and he goes with the two ladies and the knapsack with the pillowcase full of marijuana. He goes back to his motel. Unfortunately, he went to the wrong motel, and he goes upstairs, because there's two hotels, are very similar motels in these small towns. He goes upstairs to what he thinks is his room, and of course the key doesn't work. So he can't make the key work, and Al did not have I don't want to say that he had a temper, but let's say that it could kind of come to the surface quickly. So he kicked the door in of this hotel room, and there was a man and his wife in the room, and it scared the living daylights out of them. So they call the police. Al gets arrested. The police come there to the motel. They arrest him. And you know what it is now. They arrest him. They leave the two young ladies and the pillowcase full of pot.
With you.
There. So now Al, when he gets to the court, he's got to call the AD and tell the AD what's going on. So the AD goes down and gets him out of jail, brings him back, and he brought the two young ladies for the crew. So he come back. So he's there now. This is the story that everybody. I'll soften the language because I don't want to offend anybody on your podcast. Okay. But a few days later, I think I've told you guys, Richard Fleischer, who directed Mr. Majestyk, was not one of my favorite directors.
Right.
Correct. I do remember that.
He also directed The Dawn is Dead. He directed that as well. He directed
that's
that
right.
movie. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. He had the most incredible thing. He would do one movie that would become a hit, and then that would carry him for about 3 flops. and then he would do another movie that would become. Anyway, he was so what we decided is that Al loved he loved blackberry brandy. That was his drink of choice. He really liked that. And so the director, Richard, he decided that when we went up into this mountain cabin where the big shootout was taking place, that he was going to sequester us all up there. He didn't want Al to have any booze, couldn't have any pot. The girls couldn't, everything had to stay down. So basically, we're up there, and Al is sequestered on this place. And needless to say, after about 3 or 4 days, it was getting a little testy. So there's the shootout scene in Mr. Majestyk where Al Lettieri is on the roof, which of course there was a lot of moisture up there at that time of the morning that you had to be careful on those slate roofs. So Al is up on the roof, and he's got his shotgun, and he's supposed to shoot at the good guys. And so he's standing up there, and I guess I can go ahead and do the whole thing. So Lettieri's up there, and he shouts down to Dick, the director, Richard. He shouts down to Dick. He says, "Dick, he says, who do I shoot? And Richard Fleischer, in his intimidable way, the only way he could do this, he looks up at Al and he says to Al, well, Al, if you had read the script, you would know who you're going to shoot. Well, I don't need to tell you that the short fuse that Al had was gone. And Al looks down at him, and in this voice that you could hear, we were way up in the mountains in Colorado. In this voice, I'm guarantee you some people down in the city 400 miles away heard this. Al Lettieri looks down at him, and he says, Dick, if I had read this effing script, he didn't say effing, if I had read this effing script, I wouldn't even be here. So now tell me who I shoot, and I'll shoot him. And that just went out over the. You just can't believe it. And I just to this day, my wife still lets me to tell that story because it just absolutely cracks her up. And when we came down from the mountains, Al and I, the last time I saw him on that thing, I saw him later in L.A., but the last time I saw him is that he came into the bar after we came down from there the following day. He came into the bar and he came over and sitting next to me and he said, are you wrapped? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm wrapped. I said, I get out of here tomorrow. And he said, Jesus, I wish I could go with you. He said,
what a great talent. And it's a shame that he died not long after that, but it's not a big surprise when you hear about how he lived. And he was actually connected too to the mob in some way.
Mr. Majestyk had a great script, so I don't agree with him on that one.
Oh yeah, we're not going to agree with that. We're the This Week in Charles Bronson program, and it's also one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was more of anger at Richard than it was of anything else. Because
I think so too.
He wasn't a real likable guy, was he, Richard Fleischer?
No, he was, and not only that. I as an actor, of course, my background is completely different than other actors, but the same as many actors, as being, like basically Stanislavski, and I studied with Strasberg and Sandy Meisner and that group of teachers. Meisner I thought was the best, and Carl Redkoff. But the thing with that is that when you're working in a film, you obviously love any real moment, if you can have a real moment. And one of the only time that I won't bore you with one of the times, but the one time that I really had a problem with Richard is that my scene was as the deputy. I had to drive a car up this road and at pretty good speed, as the speed I could do it, which was fine as a kid in tobacco farms and all the thing. I learned how to put trucks sideways on dirt roads and all that. So I could do my own driving. So I had to drive up, make a sharp turn, hit a mark, which for the audience means a certain place you got to start for the shot. Hit a mark, come out of the car, get my gun out, and have this shootout with these guys. So I come up on the first take, I come up and I hit the mark perfectly. But in coming out of the car, I accidentally knocked my hat off, which to me was a real moment. I mean, it was nothing, that's, good Lord, when an officer's in a real shootout or something like that, you're not going to be concerned about whether you kept your hat on or not.
Right, exactly.
And so I come out of that with the gun to do the shooting and all of a sudden I hear over the speaker, cut! So I stop, and then Dick, Mr. Fleischer, says, all right, we got to go back to the top. And Jordan, will you try to see if you can keep your hat on this time?
Wow.
And I just thought, oh man. So I got back in the car, and I wasn't a big enough star to tell him what I thought of him. So I got back in the car, and we did it again. And of course, my hat stayed on that time. But it was just, to me, that was kind of the thing. I've worked with other directors that you do things like that, and the directors say, "Oh, that was great. Keep that in. Keep that in."
That's right.
Because when you're working in film, it's different when you're on the stage. I've always said, when people have asked me, did I prefer working on the stage or working in film, and I said, well, if I have to answer to the director, I prefer working on the stage. Because when I'm on the stage, the director can tell me whatever he wants me to tell me. But when I'm doing the performance that night, if I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it. But in film, there's so much they can do with editing and things like that. And of course, if you want to have a career and you don't become a big star, you just want to be one of those guys that they say, hey, hire Jordan Rhodes. He's really good. We can get him for this. And you find out that it's just better if you get along with everybody.
Right,
Jordan. When I say that,
I'm such a nerd that those that shootout you had in Mr. Majestyk there on the streets in La Junta, Colorado. I've been there. I've walked across that same street where you had that shootout, and I'm gonna compliment you here for a moment because I just really. I know that Mr. Majestyk, as far as your film work, I know you've done a lot of TV credits and those types of things, but as far as your film work, I just want to compliment you on that because when I was a kid growing up, at that point, I was a big Charles Bronson fan, but I always kind of had an attraction towards your character. And in that movie, you're kind of, it's kind of, you're not Charles Bronson from the standpoint of the role, but your character has this kind of quiet confidence. It has kind of this authority. And like in that shootout there in the streets of La Junta, Colorado, you're kind of tough. You kind of take care of business. And even when I was like a 13, 14-year-old, your character stood out to me then. And I don't know how exactly to describe that in terms of who you are as a person, those types of things. But I know that's a compliment that I want to give you, that you had this way about you that I responded to. And even as a teenager, I responded to that. And I still respond to that today. And so I just want to compliment you on your work there with Bronson and Lettieri. And I know those guys have been in some great movies and have done some great work, but so have you. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate that. And I always have.
Well, I really appreciate
we're big fans.
that, Brad.
We're your fan club now.
Well, I think one of the things that leads to that, and me having that persona, whatever it is on film, is that I was actually very early in my career, I became friends with a lot of stunt guys. And quite honestly, when we were on these locations, I preferred, and they invited me in to hang out with the stunt guys because an awful lot of actors, and I don't mean this derogatorily, but it's just a fact. An awful lot of actors are kind of full of beans. And so rather than hanging out with them, I preferred to hang out with the stunt guys, but it helped me in the sense that, like in that shootout scene you're talking about, they offered me a stunt man for not only the firing that I was doing over the back of one of the cars, but you might remember that I was next to a car that the trunk blew out on.
I remember every moment of those scenes.
And I remember they came to me and they asked me, they said, do you want us to have a stunt guy? And I said, no. I said, I already spoke to the guy who's in charge of that. And he told me how far he's going to blow that trunk lid and everything. And I said, no, I would really prefer to do this myself, because doing that and running down the street and then shouting to that, they went that way.
Get that truck, go to the truck.
Right. I've always, and I really stunt guys for that, because I did a movie, one of those bicycle movies called Angel Unchained.
Yes.
Early in my career. And in that one, I really became Bud Eakins. You guys may or may not know the name. Bud Eakins used to do a lot of stunt work for Steve McQueen. And Bud he was a premier motorcycle guy. And it's so funny because he was the first one that I learned from, that in The Great Escape, the motorcycle, if you guys remember The Great Escape, when Steve McQueen is this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bronson's in that, of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, here's something you might not know about that. But in that movie, Steve McQueen was such an incredible motorcycle guy. He was great with cars, too, but he was such an incredible motorcycle guy that the only thing he didn't do in that chase scene was the jump over the fence where he got caught in the barbed wire.
Right.
And Steve wanted to do that because the stunt guy that I was just talking about before, with Bud Eakins, when I was talking to Bud and I said something about, you did all that stuff. He said, no, Jordan. He said, I didn't do all that at all. So the only thing I did was I did that jump into the fence. And it's the only reason I did that is because the producers wouldn't let Steve do it. He said, but Steve was such an incredible motorcycle guy that he not only rode the motorcycle when he was the guy being chased by the German guy, they put him in a German uniform and had him chasing himself in the film.
Oh, wow.
He did the riding for the German guy that was chasing him in the film because he could do that. And I used to come in contact with Steve quite a bit out in California when I would just go out and do some practicing. I did desert racing, but I never was any good at motocross. And I used to go out there, and Steve used to go out there and practice all the time. But becoming friends with the stunt guy, that just when we did this movie called Angel Unchained, and directors really like this because there's a scene I play this sidekick to this kind of bad guy, and I'm another bad guy, a sidekick, and we're running these I don't know, in those days as hippies, we're running them off this property. Anyway, there's this big fight thing. We're in this dune buggy, and as we come up, one of these guys, these motorcycle guys, jumps up on the dune buggy, grabs my character, and jerks me out of the dune buggy as the dune buggy is moving. So when we were getting ready to do that scene, they were talking about, well, I heard the director say, well, look, we'll do here, and then we'll do a stop and a cut, and then we can get a stunt guy in for Jordan. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, I went to the stunt guy, Buddy, because I was just talking to him, and I said, Bud, I said, can I do this? And he said, you want to try to do it? And I said, yeah. I said, I don't know why I can't do it. And I said, he said, okay. So let me tell you. He said, when I jump up on a Jeep, I don't jump up on the four-wheeler here, the dune buggy. He said, I'll grab you. He said, I'll whisper in your ear when I say go. You push off with your legs. I'll push off, and I'll pull you out of the dune buggy. He said, the reason you got to push off, Jordan, is we got to clear the wheel. Because he said, if we come out and we don't clear the wheel, that wheel will run over us in the back. And so I said, okay, great. So I got in there, and of course, he jumped up and grabbed me and said, go, and I pushed, and we came out and did it. And so the director just loved that. And later on, they let me do, in the fight scene, when the guy takes my arm and throws me up on the hood of the truck, they let me do that. And I got to do some of that stuff. And so I just became one of those actors that the stunt guys, in fact, one of the stunt guys, I said one day, they said, well, Jordan, he said, you know what they say about you? And I said, no. They said, well, the stunt guy said, over here, there's no S about that actor, talking about the chicken stuff. But they said, they said, no, he says, no, he said, that guy's okay. But so that's, I just think that's in the roles that I've done, the few action roles that I have done, has worked to my favor, that I knew these stunt guys, and they took care of me. They would pad me up on my elbows and things like that, and they liked the fact that you could do it. And I always loved it, even simple stuff. I know once on one of RJ's Robert Wagner, one of his series, when we were being rescued and we're getting in this helicopter, and Leo Penn was directing that, and he said, and Leo said, Jordan, he said, you want me to, he said, we got some stunt people here. And he said, I can do a cut and the stunt people can get in the helicopter and fly off. And I said, no. I said, I'll do it. And I said, and then the actress that was with me, who actually was my wife, I said, you don't mind? And she said, no. So, and when you see that heart to heart, and that we get in that helicopter, even though there's a cut, that's still us in the helicopter that flew away. But I just never, I never said anything about that. I quote did all my own stunts. I never said that. I did say that I did some of my stunts. That when the stunt people would think that I could do it, that I could handle it, I would do it. But anyway, listen, thank you very much for the compliment. I love it, and I'll keep you guys up to speed on anything that may happen with Papa. I'm hoping that I can get that done, because I'm just absolutely convinced. And to me, Taylor Sheridan would be the guy to do it.
Oh, God, thank you, Jordan. That would be
with what he
perfect.
did. Yeah, because he did all that great stuff in 1883. He did the other thing in 19.
Mm-hmm.
He did that stuff where he has the
Landman is the
character.
show that I love right now. I just love the show Landman. I just Billy Bob
Oh,
Thornton's
me too.
incredible in it, and
Oh,
if he
like
touched it,
Hemingway, he kind of a storyteller who comes from the same background as his stories. Similar, right? Because he's a Texas guy and all that, right?
Yeah, I agree, and I just agree the way he. I mean, look at the way he handled the African stuff in that whatever it was, whichever one that
1923.
was. Yeah, when he handled that, I mean, I just think all I've been asking the agents and the representatives and these people to do is, I said, I'm just trying to get this to Taylor Sheridan. If he reads the presentation and says, I don't want to do it, okay.
That's
but
right.
At least let him read it. Let him get to it. And
That's right.
Thank you guys very much. And anything you may do for me, for Greg Gutbill, it'll be greatly appreciated.
Oh, we're gonna make sure. But listen, you've done it all, Jordan. We're so proud to have you here again. We're big fans. I got to wrap this up because I got my final basketball game with my son's basketball team today. But you've been listening. Yeah, but you've been listening to This Week in Charles Bronson, the legend Jordan Rhodes. The man has done it all: acting, radio, directing, and soon a big Taylor Sheridan 8-part. We know it's going to happen. Jordan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, buddy.
Listen, Eric, Brad, thank you guys very much. Have a great
Thank you, Jordan. Good luck to you, my friend.
Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.